The most important skill was never taught. Not in dating advice. Not in relationship books. Not in therapy sessions about building healthy connections. Because the people who mastered it never needed to explain it. Their absence did the teaching. In every relationship, romantic, professional, social, there are two types of people. The first choice and the backup option. The person they pursue versus the person they settle for when pursuit fails. The difference between them isn't beauty, isn't charm, isn't how much they care. It's a skill so counterintuitive that most people never learn it exists. The skill of making yourself unavailable enough that people fear losing access to you. We are taught that relationships require availability. Be there for people. Show up consistently. Demonstrate your interest. Make yourself accessible. Dating advice tells you to respond quickly, to show enthusiasm, to make your feelings clear. Don't play games. Be authentic about your interest. Show them you care. The entire culture of modern connection celebrates transparency and availability. If you like someone, show it. If you want someone, pursue them. If you care about someone, make sure they know. Be the person who always picks up, who always makes time, who always prioritizes them. Prove your worth through constant demonstration. And people believe this completely. They think the more available they are, the more valued they'll be. The more they show up, the more likely they are to be chosen. The more they accommodate, the more they'll be prioritized. But it doesn't work that way. Because here's what nobody tells you. People don't value what's always available. They value what they're not sure they can have. The person who's always there becomes the backup option. Expected, reliable, safe. But the person who might not be there, who has other options, who seems perfectly capable of walking away, that person becomes the priority. Not through cruelty, through basic human psychology. We chase what moves away from us. We take for granted what stays. The silent skill is this: making people understand, without ever saying it directly, that you have a life that exists independently of them. It's not playing hard to get. It's actually being hard to get. Not through games. Through genuine self-priority. Most people get this exactly backwards. They think the way to be chosen is to make themselves indispensable. To be the most available, most accommodating, most invested person. To demonstrate that they drop everything for this person. But that's exactly what makes them the backup option. Because when you're always available, you're communicating something at a subconscious level. I have nothing better to do than wait for you. My life revolves around your attention. You're my first choice, regardless of how you treat me. And people respond to that message by treating you exactly as someone with no other options. As the backup, the safe bet, the one they can return to after exploring more exciting possibilities. The silent skill has three components. First, genuine scarcity through self-investment. Not manufactured absence. Not strategic non-responses. But actual investment in a life that's full without them. When you're genuinely busy building something that matters, work, friendships, goals, passions, your availability naturally becomes limited. You don't respond immediately because you're engaged in something important. You're not always free because you have priorities beyond any single person. You create real scarcity, not performed scarcity. And real scarcity creates value. Second, emotional non-dependence. You don't need them to validate your worth. You don't fall apart when they're distant. You don't require constant reassurance that they're still interested. Your emotional state isn't a function of their attention. This doesn't mean you don't care. It means you've built something solid inside yourself that doesn't collapse when they withdraw. And that stability is magnetic in a way that neediness never is. Third, the willingness to be the backup option for no one. Not as a power move. As a boundary. You'd rather be alone than be someone's second choice. You'd rather be single than be the person they come to when their first option doesn't work out. And you demonstrate this willingness through behavior, not words. When someone treats you like a backup option, you disappear. Not dramatically. Just, you stop being available. You stop accommodating their inconsistency. You stop accepting breadcrumbs. You stop waiting around. Because you genuinely value yourself more than you fear being alone. She learned this the hardest way possible. By being everyone's backup option for years without understanding why. In dating, she was the girl guys would text when their first choice was busy. the one they'd keep on the hook but never fully commit to. She'd be understanding, patient, available whenever they finally had time for her. And they'd take her availability as confirmation that she'd always be there. So they'd keep exploring other options, keep her waiting, keep stringing her along. Because why wouldn't they? She'd proven she'd accept whatever they offered. In friendships, she was the person people called when they needed something but were mysteriously busy when she needed support. She'd drop everything to help. And they'd take her help and disappear until the next crisis. Because she'd trained them to see her as a resource, not a priority. At work, she was the person who'd cover for everyone, take on extra projects, stay late. And they'd rely on her reliability while giving the promotions to people who were less available but more demanding. Because her constant availability signaled that she didn't have better options. Then something shifted. Not through a decision. Through exhaustion. She was too tired to keep being available. Too burned out to keep accommodating. So she stopped. Not strategically. Just honestly. When someone texted after weeks of silence, she didn't respond immediately. Because she was genuinely busy with her own life. When someone offered plans that were convenient for them but inconvenient for her, she said no. Because she'd made commitments to herself. When someone treated her inconsistently, she stopped making excuses for them. She just moved on. And something interesting happened. The people who treated her like a backup option suddenly became interested. Not all of them. The ones who'd only valued her availability disappeared. But some of them, the ones who actually cared, started showing up differently. Consistently. Intentionally. Like they'd suddenly realized she might not always be there. And new people entered her life who treated her like a priority from the start. Because her behavior was communicating something different now. This person has options. This person values herself. This person will leave if you don't treat her well. She hadn't become cruel or manipulative. She'd just stopped accepting backup status. And the moment she did, she stopped being offered it. The skill of never being a backup option isn't about manipulation. It's about self-respect that's so deeply internalized that it changes your behavior automatically. When you genuinely value yourself, you stop accepting inconsistent treatment. Not as a strategy, as a reflex. You don't waste energy on people who are lukewarm about you because you're looking for people who are certain. You don't accommodate disrespect because being alone feels better than being someone's backup. You don't chase people who are walking away because you understand. Anyone who wants you will make it clear. And this shift, this internal shift from hoping to be chosen to only accepting being prioritized, changes everything. Not because you've become cold, but because you've become clear. Clear about what you will and won't accept. Clear about your worth. Clear that backup status is never on the table. We live in a culture that teaches the opposite of this skill. Social media tells you to always be available, to respond quickly, to show interest openly. Dating advice tells you to pursue, to be vulnerable, to make your feelings known. Relationship culture celebrates people who are understanding, patient, always there. But none of that prevents backup status. In fact, it guarantees it. Because in a world where everyone is desperately available, constantly accessible, always accommodating, the person who isn't stands out. The skill nobody teaches is this. Stop being available to people who aren't making you a priority. Not as punishment, as self-preservation. Build a life so full that your time is genuinely limited. Build self-worth so solid that inconsistent attention doesn't tempt you. Build standards so clear that backup status is immediately rejected. This isn't emotional manipulation. It's emotional intelligence. Understanding that people value what they work for more than what's freely given. That scarcity creates desire in ways that abundance never does. That the fastest way to stop being the backup option is to refuse to accept that position. Modern self-control isn't about controlling others. It's about controlling yourself. Controlling your impulse to be available to people who don't prioritize you. Controlling your need for validation from people who are ambivalent about you. Controlling your fear of being alone enough to walk away from being someone's second choice. The silent skill that was never taught but has always been rewarded. The ability to value yourself enough that other people have no choice but to value you too. Not because you demanded it, but because your behavior made it clear that devaluing you means losing access to you. You're not the backup option because people are cruel. You're the backup option because you've accepted that position through your availability. And the moment you stop accepting it, The moment you genuinely become unavailable to people who don't prioritize you, you'll discover something liberating. The right people will make you their priority, and the wrong people will reveal themselves by refusing to. Either way, you win, because you're no longer waiting around to be chosen. You're choosing yourself, and that's the skill that changes everything.